Welcome to Stories of Change. Over the years, I have become fascinated by stories, not because they tell us what happened, but because they help us understand why it happened. In this series, I share stories from history, business, science, education, and sometimes unexpected places. Together, we explore the lessons hidden inside of them and what they can teach us about change, leadership, human behavior, innovation, and adaptation. The story is interesting. The pattern is useful. The lesson is where the value lives. So let's begin. A few weeks ago, I was in London. Like many visitors, I found myself standing in front of the famous underground map. I had heard the stories. The tube could be confusing. You'll probably get lost. So I stood there for 10 or 15 minutes, tracing colored lines with my finger, trying to work out where I was, where I needed to go, and which train I should catch. And despite all the preparation, I still caught the wrong train. A couple of stops later, I realized my mistake. I got off, looked at the map again, changed platforms, and was back on my way within minutes. I was not suddenly an expert on the London Underground, but I was confident enough to keep moving. And that experience made me curious. How could a map that seemed so simple make it so easy to recover from a mistake? When I came home, I started reading about it, and I discovered something extraordinary. The world's most famous transport map was deliberately wrong. The distances were wrong. The geography was wrong. Stations that were kilometers apart appeared close together. The center of London was enlarged. The outer areas were compressed. Even the River Thames was bent and simplified. It was not designed to show London as it really was. It was designed to help people find their way. And behind it was a man called Harry Beck. His story did not begin in a famous design studio. In 1931, Beck was unemployed. He had previously worked as an engineering draftsman for the Underground, producing the kinds of diagrams used to make complicated electrical systems understandable. Looking at the existing Underground map, he wondered whether it might be possible, as he modestly put it, to simply tidy it up. By the early 1930s, London's railway network had grown so large that the map was becoming increasingly difficult to read. Stations in central London were squeezed together. Stations further out were spread across the page. The map tried to show where everything was, but in doing so, it made it harder for people to understand how everything connected. Beck changed the question. Passengers did not really need to know the precise distance between every station. They needed to know, where am I, where do I change, and how do I get where I need to go? Beck had spent years drawing electrical circuit diagrams. Circuit diagrams do not show the real physical distance between every component. They show how the components connect. And Beck wondered, what if a railway map worked the same way? So he straightened the lines, he limited them to horizontal, vertical, and 45-degree angles. He evened out the spacing between stations, he enlarged the crowded center, and he allowed geography to bend. Connections became more important than distance. To us, the result now looks familiar. At the time, it looked radical. His colleagues reportedly liked the idea, but the Underground's publicity department rejected it. They usually do. The design distorted London too much. The angles were too unusual. There was concern that passengers might not understand it. Think about that for a moment. The map that would eventually make London easier to navigate was rejected because people feared it would be too difficult to understand. But Beck persisted. He refined the design. He submitted it again. And eventually, London Underground agreed to test it. And here's one of my favorite details in the story. The so-called trial print run was 750,000 maps. They appeared in January 1933. Passengers loved them. Another 100,000 were printed the following month. Then came the posters. And soon, the design that managers feared people would not understand had become the authoritative image of the London Underground. From his design and artwork, Harry Beck was paid 10 guineas, but the influence of his idea travelled much further. By 1939, only 6 years later, a railway map in Sydney, Australia, was already borrowing his approach. Over time, transport systems around the world adopted similar principles. Tokyo, Paris, New York, Singapore, Sydney, different cities, different networks, the same basic idea. The map that had been rejected because people might not understand it had become a new language for urban travel. There's something deeply human about this story. Harry Beck did not remove the complexity of London. The tracks stayed where they were. The stations did not move. The city did not become simpler. He removed unnecessary complexity from the way people experienced it. That is a very different thing. Today, we might talk about cognitive load. We might talk about wayfinding. We might call it a human-centered design. Harry Beck did not use those terms. He simply understood that people rarely need to see the whole system in all its complexity. They need enough clarity to make the next decision. I sometimes think organizations do the exact opposite when they introduce change, and particularly when they introduce artificial intelligence. They give people the whole territory, every tool, every model, every capability, every policy, every risk, every possible use case, every prediction about the future. It is like handing someone a detailed satellite image of London when all they really want to know is which train to get me to King's Cross. People are often not resisting AI because they cannot see its potential. In fact, many people can see too much potential. They can see the opportunity. They can also see the risk. They are curious about what it could do and worried about what it might change. They want the benefits, but they do not want to lose their judgment, their identity, and their sense of control. That is the inner tension of adoption. We ask people to move towards something that attracts them and unsettles them at the same time. And then we often respond to that tension by giving them even more information. But people do not always need more information. They need better navigation. They need to understand, where does this fit into my work? What can I try safely? What should I continue doing myself? Where do I need human judgment? And what is the next useful step? That may be the real role of an AI adoption leader, not to explain every part of the territory, but to draw a map that helps people begin moving through it. There is a famous phrase from the philosopher Alfred Korsbiewski: "The map is not the territory." A map is always a simplification. It leaves things out. It exaggerates some things. It reduces others. A good map is not valuable because it captures reality perfectly. It is valuable because it helps us move through reality. The same is true inside organizations. Strategies are maps. Operating models are maps. Roadmaps are maps. AI adoption frameworks are maps. None of them is the territory. Their job is not to describe everything. Their job is to help people make progress. Harry Beck did not change London. He changed how millions of people moved through it. The tracks stayed exactly where they were. The stations did not move. The city did not become less complicated. People simply became more confident navigating it. Perhaps that is what great leaders do. They do not pretend complexity has disappeared. They help people move confidently through it. And perhaps that's where the inner game of change begins. Not when people understand everything, not when uncertainty disappears, but when they understand enough and feel confident enough to take the next step. Thanks for listening to the Stories of Change. Until next time, stay well and stay safe.